definitely.
So
and with there's so many trees around, it'd probably be a good idea to hire someone who really knows what they're doing, like a licensed logger, tree cutter, tree surgeon, if you will. I know Mike Flannery of Mike's Tree Service was down here today and did a really good job and was able to cut this tree down without impacting any other trees. So, you know, trees are important. And I think one thing, looking at Mr. Whaley's lot here, is you have the shade value, and that's really nice. And it would be a shame to just open up this area and you'd have, you know, all this warm air blasting towards your house. That'd make your utility bill. So there's a lot of value in having trees, especially the shade, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Now, I notice here we have a dead tree over here, Sam, and it's still standing. What's the value in a dead tree standing?
It's great wildlife habitat.
Okay.
The woodpeckers use them, of course, insects. If you like bugs, they'll use the trees, but they've got great wildlife benefits.
Okay.
So if it's not a safety hazard, we actually recommend that people leave them there.
Okay, very good. So we've met, I filled out the application, I'm going to get a boat dock, I want underbrush permit, maybe a nice little pathway I can put down here for safe access. Underground electric line, I believe, and water line if I want some electricity down here at my dock. And I do know that you have to have a certified electrician sign off on that.
Right.
So we fill out all this and you generate the permit, then what happens?
They'll get a letter in the mail with the permits and the bill. Of course, there's always got to be money involved.
Sure.
And they'll go ahead and they'll pay the bill, sign the permit, send them back to us. Our assistant operations manager will sign them. We'll send them back to the property owners, and once they get when they get the permits the second time, once they're signed, then the permits are official and they're allowed to start doing the work that's on the permit.
Okay, all right, so we definitely have to wait until we have the signed permit in hand. And we paid it. And then do you guys post a tag or anything indicating I have a permit?
Yep.
Okay.
If they are just getting an underbrushing permit, we have a carcinite post we put out there, and it has their permit number on it.
Okay.
If they have a dock, we have actually got a little sticker that we just post on the outside edge of it, so that if we come up by boat, we can see that.
Okay.
That posted sticker.
And how long is this permit process, you know, my permit good for?
It's good for 5 years.
Okay. All right.
And at that time, we come out and re-inspect it, and if everything's up to snuff and everything, then we'll go ahead and reissue it for another 5 years. If there's some problems with it, the flotation needs replaced or something like that, then we'll work with them to get that done and then go ahead and reissue it.
Okay. Will you guys come back and inspect my permitted area in between the time of issuance and renewal?
Oftentimes we do.
Okay.
We'll always be back at least once every 5 years, but oftentimes we come back a lot more often.
So it's important to make sure that I maintain my area according to the permit and be in compliance there. Okay, great. Well, Sam, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to move up the hill to our property line and talk a little bit about the Corps boundary line and some information about that. So please stay tuned.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people, connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
Welcome back to the program. Now, Sam, me being the landowner here and getting the permit, continuing our process, I see you're on my private property.
And you're on my public property.
Okay, so how do our viewers know which is private property and public land at West Point Lake?
The best way to find out, or the best way to find the line, is to look for red markers. And this one right here that we have is what we call a point on tangent, and it's just a survey mark that is actually on the line.
Okay,
and
so that is the property line?
That is the property line,
okay.
That's correct.
Now I'm sure these aren't every several feet down the property line, so how else can we tell where the core property line is?
What most people are going to find around their houses are these trees that we have marked with the red paint.
Okay.
And the painting system shows relatively, it's never exact where the line is, but it shows within a couple feet of where that property line is.
Okay, so if I have a tree here and the paint's on the outside, the property line's going to be outside that area, is that correct?
Right, if the paint's on the left-hand side of the tree, then the property line runs on the left-hand side of that tree also, like you said, within a couple feet.
Okay. So we have paint down this way, and I'm looking down this way. We have more paint down
Right.
there. So this is kind of the approximate line. If I have a question, if I'm wanting to build a building or put something down here on my private property, what could I do to make sure I definitely know where that property line's at?
You could definitely call a ranger and have them come out, and we'll just come out here and meet with you and basically do
And
what we
show
just
you
did,
where the
show you
line
where the
is.
line is.
Okay,
And
great.
then if we need something more exact, we'd have to actually get a surveyor in
Okay.
to tell you exactly where the line, if you need to know more than within a foot or so.
Sure. Okay. Now, has anybody ever put anything over on public land?
Oh yeah, we run into that quite a bit.
Really? And what do you call that?
That's what we call an encroachment.
Encroachment.
Right.
Okay.
And
All right.
we've seen everything from just something as small as a doghouse, or maybe people sawed their yard and they'll saw it over onto the public
Okay.
property.
Okay.
But we've also ran into fences, nice cast iron fences coming over onto
Mm-hmm.
the property, and we've actually even had a house. The house
Mm.
itself wasn't built, but the roof overhung onto
Okay.
the Corps of Engineers property, and you can still go out there to this day and see where that corner of the roof was cut off.
Sure.
Because it was considered on public property.
So I guess kind of like if you're a landowner and I'm a landowner and this is our property line in between here, I wouldn't put my, doghouse and so forth on your property. You wouldn't want that, and vice versa. So it's
Exactly.
kind of the same thing here, right? And this being public land, federal land, I think that even has a more higher value too, right? Because you're out here trying to preserve the integrity of the property.
That's exactly
Is
right.
that
This
right?
is land that we want our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, we want them to come out here to West Point Project, and we want it to look the same for them as what it did for us, or does for us right now.
That's right, because I could see if you allowed anybody just to, even put playground equipment or whatever, next thing you know, the private folks would take over the public land,
That's
and
exactly
that's
right.
not what it was designed for. You need to preserve. So that's a great point. Sam, if you do happen up on something like that encroachment, what's usually the process with that?
The first thing we do is contact the landowner and have an on-site meeting with them, talk to them about it.
Sure.
And if we can, we just try to resolve it right then and there, just have them move over the doghouse, or sometimes they're going to have to tear up that fence, or like I said, cut the roof off, or not the whole roof obviously, but the corner of the house, whatever the case may be.
Okay.
We try to resolve it just by talking to them. If it becomes a problem, then we can go to legal measures. But
Okay.
usually they're pretty good about, once they realize that they're in the wrong,
Good
they'll just go ahead
compliance,
and,
definitely.
right.
So folks, the rule of thumb here is don't put anything over on public land that you don't have a permit for. And if you have any questions about that property line or what you can and can't do, call the Corps of Engineer office. That's really great. Now, can you ride a vehicle down here on public land or any kind of equipment down here, Sam?
The only time that we allow any type of motorized vehicles on public property is with a permit.
Okay.
So of course that's going to be documented in your file also. If somebody's disabled and we get a note from their doctor saying that they are truly disabled, we can add that to their permit, and they're able to drive a golf cart down
Okay.
to their dock and back, just
Okay.
for
Access.
right, just for the
Okay.
access.
But to just ride a car down there, a truck, say I've got all this nice inner tube equipment and I don't want to drag it all the way down there and back up, I can't just drive my truck down there, huh?
No, sir.
Yeah. And I could see where that'd probably cause some erosion problems too if
Definitely.
you constantly do that. And four-wheelers, I'm sure you see a
We
lot
see
of
quite
that
a few
go
of
on.
those.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, even if you have that disabled permit, you can't drive the four-wheelers. Those are never
Sure.
permitted.
Okay.
Because they have those knobbier tires and
Sure.
they cause more erosion.
They can cause a lot of
So,
problems. So important thing here to remember again is this is public land. It's not for you to go and do whatever you want on. You have to have a permit to do that. So, and we have recreation areas where you can launch your boat and do those activities. So definitely need to stay. How about, can my kids set up a tent over here and build a campfire or anything like that?
No fires on public property
Okay.
either, except for,
right.
of course, in the
Okay.
designated fire rings at the campsites.
About how many miles of property line does the Corps have around West Point Lake?
About 300 miles of property line.
300
right
miles
at
of
that.
property line. Okay, well that's pretty good. And you rangers walk the property line, I guess, to ensure that nobody's encroaching on the land there.
That's
Is
right.
that right? Okay, excellent.